Hey everyone, I've been meaning to start a series showing my progress climbing through the ranks on platforms like Global Mid Stakes Online. I haven't seen much footage regarding climbing the online mid stakes, as most videos seem to be focused on the super elite cash game end bosses like Linus Love or Trueteller. I also find the mid stakes online to be a lot more relatable to your average player, which is the primary reason I wanted to make this series. All the hands I analyze in this series are going to be done through PioSolver, which is a game theory optimal software that's used to analyze poker hands. PioSolver is sort of the industry standard for improving your play, and I would highly recommend looking into it if you like what you see. I've left a link in the description for you to take a closer look at their website, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have in the comments below. This is a hand I played recently at Global 400 online. Villain started by making it 3x from the button. And in a low rake environment such as Global 400, I'd like to see slightly smaller opens, such as 2.5x or even 2.25x from the button. This forces the big blind to defend much wider ranges and play much more marginal holdings, which in turn makes it harder for the big blind to not accidentally overfold either pre or post flop. The action folds to me, and from the big blind I use a polarized 3-betting range. This is because if we simply 3-bet our best hands, such as aces, kings, queens, ace king, etc., perceptive villains can blast us off our holdings when we just flat and are extremely capped. This is a rough approximation of a GTO 3-betting range from the big blind, facing a 3x 35% button open. And as you can see, Jack 10 offsuit is a minority 3-bet. I elected to go ahead and raise this time, and note that from the big blind, I'm raising to at least 4x standardly, and potentially even bigger if we're deep stacked, there were pre-flop cold callers, or I believe I have a significant skill edge over the initial raiser and want to threaten to play for stacks. So in position, villain calls, which they should do with a wide array of hands such as middling pocket pairs, mid to high suited hands, and strong broadways. And this is a rough approximation of a GTO button calling range, which is what I'll be using for this model. The flop comes ace 6 4 with 2 diamonds, and in many spots our goal should be to try and find a strategy that captures roughly the same percentage of the pot as a GTO strategy while remaining simple to execute. One of the first gems you might discover using PioSolver is that as the 3-better preflop, you can bet a third of the pot or even less on many textures with your entire range, while sacrificing very little EV. Even when you have a polarized 3-betting range, such as from the big blind, this can still be a very strong move. Here, if we give PioSolver the option to bet 33%, 66%, or check on the flop, it chooses to bet a third with the majority of its range. If you remove the options to bet 66% or check and make PioSolver bet a third with its entire range, you'll lose only around 0.5% of the EV compared to the mixed strategy, which is just a few cents. Therefore, in future models, you can simplify the game tree to force the big blind to bet a third of the pot with its entire range. After betting a third, villain should call with any pair, flush draws, and strong offsuit broadways. Notice that hands as weak as queen jack off with a diamond, pocket twos, or even 9-7 of spades are all calls. Most players are wildly overfolding in this spot and will quickly muck their underpairs and double backdoor hands, making our tiny flop bet even more profitable. Another interesting observation when looking at the button's defense range is that while villain can have the effective nuts from hands such as pocket sixes or pocket fours, Pio opts to play a call or fold strategy, rarely raising. This is because villain's range preflop is significantly weaker than ours after they just flat our 3-bet, And having a raising range on the flop will open up their calling range to being heavily exploited. If we know villain won't have many sets when they just call, we can blast away with big bets on the turn and river and put them in really tough call down spots with random ace-x hands. Villain calls, and the turn comes the Queen of Spades, which is a good card for our range. It gives us exclusive combos of pocket queens and ace-queen suited, and more combos of ace-queen offsuit than our opponent. Given the SPR of the pot, it's much better to play a single bet size strategy on the turn. Any potential EV gained from adding multiple bet sizes will be outweighed by the inability to implement them correctly. This can be verified by putting options to use multiple bet sizings on the turn and comparing the EV to a single bet size strategy. Here, we don't need to bet much bigger than half the pot to get the money in by the river. I think 55% of the pot is typically a good size in this spot and sets us up for around a 2/3 river shove. It's important to not go too big on the turn, as your bluffs will have little to no fold equity on the river if you're giving villain such good odds such as 3-1. I think this was a small mistake I made in this hand, and I would have liked to see my turn bet be about $10 smaller. Now that we know what bet sizing to use, how do you figure out which combos and frequencies of hands to bet? Taking a look at PioS's double barreling range, we see that it chooses to bet with the most obvious value hands, such as ace-king, pocket sixes, pocket fours, ace-queen, and other two-pair holdings. But what I found interesting when looking at this is that Pio checks both aces and queens at a very high frequency. This is because those hands block a majority of villain's calling range, making it more likely that we would profit by checking to them and letting them bluff. Furthermore, adding in hands like top or second set to our checking range is a great way to protect our weaker holdings and prevent villain from running us over when we do check. This is a recurring pattern you'll notice the more you look at hands in PioSolver. Often, our combos that block villain's calling range are turned into checks, just because we can let villain bluff at us and protect our checking range. Picking your specific bluffs to use is a more complicated subject, however. If we tap through the hands Pio is betting, we see that on the double flush board, it likes to split checking and betting with a lot of its flush draws, giving us good board coverage both when we check or bet. A hand like Queen 8 of Diamonds is played as a check, as the showdown value and ability to call a bluff is much more important than bluffing ourselves. Playing draws that have showdown value to their showdown value is another prominent theme you'll see the more you look at hands in Pio. The solver also bets a variety of its suited gut shots, and hands like 5-4 suited, which don't have real showdown value and are better played as double barrels with 5 outs to 2 pair or trips. 5-4 suited also blocks pocket fours, which is one of villain's best call down hands. If we look at the offsuit Broadway hands, Jack 10 offsuit is a majority double barrel. This is because we block hands like Ace 10 or Ace Jack, making it more likely that villain has top pair no kicker or second pair type hands. Furthermore, Jack 10 with a diamond or spade is a candidate bet, as they also block flush draws that our opponent can call us down with. Turning our gut shots that block top pairs and flush draws into double barrels is a very powerful move. After betting over half the pot, villain tanks a while before finally electing to muck. This is a spot that is massively underbluffed by the general population, and I wouldn't be surprised, especially given how long villain took, if they laid down a hand as strong as a weak ace. If you play back the line that I 3-bet pre-flop and c-bet on the flop and turn, from an outside perspective, it really just looks like the obvious ace-king or ace-queen that you're used to seeing, which is why this is such a good bluff. It looks so strong, and most people don't bluff in this spot. While villain folded, they should have continued calling with the majority of their top pairs, Queen X hands, flush draws, and sets. Even gut shots like King Jack of clubs are winning calls. And on the river, if we opt to triple barrel, villain has to call down with all of their aces, as well as some of their second pairs. If you liked what you see and you want to learn more or just see more hands like this, I've put a link in the description to the course where I learned all of this, and I'm still learning a ton. It's a super in-depth coaching site that revolves around crushing players with solver-based strategies. If you sign up with the link below, I'd be happy to even offer an hour of free coaching if you reach out to me. I'm also, again, very happy to answer any questions about this hand, PioSolver, solver strategies in general, or anything else you might want to know in the comments below.